This is always a good part, just chilling here, watching me. Nothing. Just waiting for Novak to pop in. I hope it doesn't time out on Facebook. Where are you, Mr. Novak? There's Mark, I see ya. See ya.
Hi.
Yo, Mr. Novak, how are you?
Yeah, good. You?
Good, good. All right, let me get that zone. Okay, we're going on Facey now.
What were we talking about this morning?
Let me get my clapper. And
Oh,
action. Welcome to Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, and co-host Mark Novak. And this morning we're going to be talking about franchise versus independent when we're talking about real estate offices. Are we seeing a trend away from them? Pros and cons. Just our general view. Mark,
and we're pretty qualified for this. So we have been an independent agency since 2002, fiercely independent, competing against national franchises and brands and alikes. Yep. And it's something we always get proposed with and asked about, and every single piece of business that we pitch for always asks this question. So we thought to bring it on screen would be great. And even lately, we've had a big wave of other agencies that are in franchises that ask us, what do you reckon? How do we do it? Can you help? It's a big thing out there. Big for consumers, big for real estate agents.
Yeah, and I think, so let's go with franchises. I think a big appeal, let's go. So I think brands, I don't think agents have ever been as prominent and not important, but as marketed and be so big as they have been now. I think a lot of the weight was the brand 5-10 years ago, and it was just like, I'm going with LJ Hooker and whoever they give me is good. But I find that now in the last probably 3 to 4 years, particularly the agent's profile there's growing. Like some agents out there, their profiles is very big compared to the brand, or I just think the agent profile independently, consumers are now just calling that agent rather than thinking of the company. I think it's been a really big shift.
Massive.
And that's obviously changing people's views on franchises where there was big, it was powerful before when you had that company and there's 20, 50, 100 offices. That I think the name just meant a lot, where now you get a lot from the agents. But also, Mark, I think a big one was the benefit of the franchises was they used to always, especially the newspaper, when they pitched for an independent to come to us, was a lot of it was because we've got so many offices and listings, we get a discounted rate in the newspaper, for example. And that was appealing to if you're a smaller office, that you get this bulk rate. But even our marketing, we're not really using newspaper anymore. So was that the only benefit to go with the franchise, this bulk buying power? Because it's sort of not there now, because we're not really using paper. What's your view? G'day, Andrew, for tuning in. Sabine, thank you.
Hey guys, the value proposition for a consumer of real estate services. So when I say a consumer, a landlord, a buyer. When I say consumer, I mean a seller or a tenant. The value proposition, I think, was there was an enormous amount of trust that if there was a brand, if you're associated with a brand, there was a certain amount of protection around that.
Facebook's saying broadcast interrupted. It's been paused. I don't think we're on.
It says live on my end.
The iPad's not playing anything. Hang on. Let me just go back out and double check we're still... Yeah, okay. It's working there. The screen's not. Anyway, I think we're good. So
Yeah, live on my end.
Yeah, we'll give it a crack anyway. Okay. All right, so let's go through. Let's start it with the consumer's point of. I just don't know. Sorry.
Yep,
Are
we
you
got all
still saying
working on
live?
Instagram. We got all working. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Instagram's fine. So just focus on Facebook.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go, Mark. Let's just go with.
Just
Let's
look
talk
at
about the
any.
consumer's point of view. Do you want it just from a buyer and consumer point of view, or their perceived value? And then I think that would be more. And then we can talk about from the principal's point of view of why they would choose one or the other.
Yeah, look, I think as the consumers, you got obviously consumer real estate services. You've got pretty much the main four is a buyer, a seller, or a
Yep.
tenant or a landlord. And I think those guys consuming services, they felt there was a loyalty behind that. So they felt there was a safeness about that. But that's changed a lot now with reviewing platforms and stuff like that. Agents can't get away with much at all. Whereas if agents were not doing well, were not doing the right thing, people could complain to the national brand. The national brand would take matters into their own hands. But now the consumers have much more power in their hands. They don't need that protection of a national brand, so they don't mind going out on a limb and choosing an agent. I think it's right what you're saying, Michael, and that's a really interesting thing with the brand, because I know with our office, people are more likely. People used to always call the brand and ask for our services. Now they'll call the rep of the brand and ask for their services. So there's a lot more power in the consumer's hands now for choice, and that even to drill down on a personality, you can choose your agent, the person you want to use. Do you know who that person is rather than the brand with real estate services? So there's a lot less onus on a national brand because people simply aren't choosing the national brand anymore. They're gone down to the level of the agent and down to the level of the agency and almost forgotten about that national brand even more so, I'm finding.
Yeah, and I think from that consumer point of view, you're right. Like they've got so many avenues now, like the Rate My Agents, the realestate.com profile reviews. There's just so much transparency out there at the moment that you hit the nail on the head. They sort of feel safe to go with someone who directly to that agent rather than that fail safe of under a big company and I'm safe. They've got, I really don't think we're live on Facebook. Okay. Now, what other, yes, 24. Mac, can you check Facebook to see if we're live on that computer? Thanks. That's right. We'll have it on Instagram. So, therefore, what about, there was always a big play on, if you're a buyer, if you have like one office, you pick a franchise that they're in Manly.
You've just dropped off now off live Facebook on my end.
Yeah,
it's just dropped. It's just dropped off.
That's right. Okay. So and we got Insta. That's right. We can always post it, save it. So there was always a lot of franchisees would leverage. They go, well, we've got an office in Manly with 100 buyers, but we've got this whole network of LJ hookers. So we've got really our 100 buyers plus the Newport branch, the DY. We've got 1,000 buyers for you, which an independent can't offer. I think that was a big, that they played that a lot, that sort of card of the benefit. Now, do you think with all these avenues for buyers to see properties now, it's not as, like, is that still valid, that, or was it a bit of a myth? What's your view on that? Because I know they play that card a lot. We've got 10 offices.
Sorry, ask the question again.
So a lot of, if you're part of a franchise group, one of the cards you would play was, we've got 100 offices, we got more buyers than independent. Like, how does that work? Is it smoke and mirrors? Like,
buyers don't give a shit. Sellers don't give a shit. Landlords don't give a shit. Tenants don't give a shit. That national network, and look, we used that example yesterday in the talk we were doing about commercial. We had a national commercial agent from the city. We were up against same advertising, same properties, same product we were using.
Yes.
But the service we offered was very different. The service we offered was so different that out of 12 properties we had for sale, Novak sold 11. The other brand sold 1, the national brand. So I think that local power is probably even more important than ever now.
Yeah, and
People
I
have
think
the ability to choose.
now, would it be so? I reckon a lot of people, if you're a fresh agency and never run a company, I'm seeing people start up with the franchisees, maybe to take away a little bit of the stress from the marketing, coming up with all the material, but then, because then they've got all their systems in place, but then we're seeing big shifts of some of the number one officers in that group now leaving to be independent. And I feel that is because they understand business these days. It's so competitive, and you've got to be continuing to add value, change strategies, and offer more. And I think a lot of people are wanting to do it their own way. Authenticity is a big thing we're seeing, where people who are authentic, doing things their way, putting their spin on it, are really excelling in a lot of industries. So we're seeing, we've had a couple big office brands under a franchise leave, and it's just because I felt their feeling was they wanted to do it their way, so with marketing. So I think, do you think that's probably more important ever? I know we're really big on the innovation and doing things differently. Do you think that's the driving force away from franchises, so people can put their own look and feel on how they do real estate?
Look, there's power in the consistency, but there's also weakness in agility. And like you said, authenticity. It's pretty hard to be agile, and it's pretty hard to be authentic when you're just like everyone else. It's pretty hard to be agile when you have to do what everyone has to move together to the one beat. So I think that John Cunningham, the former REI president of New South Wales, the Real Estate Institute president, took his brand to be a local brand, an authentic brand, an agile brand, rather than keeping it as a national brand that he was part of before. He's a really good barometer. You know, the former Real Estate Institute, very respected and esteemed man. So, look, the fact is that I would say there is there to little or no value in a franchise business these days, when the likes of the Real Estate Institute president's moving his own businesses away, when the likes of that seems to be the trend of moving away from the franchises. I think the only answer to that is that there is not value, not for the agency, not for the consumers, more these days than there was 10 years ago, hence the trend.
So then what do franchises have to do to sort of flip that the other way? Do you think it's just going to be basically a decline down, and then we'll be faced, say, in 10 years, there will be 90% independence? Or do you think there's still some value or tweaks they could do to bring back momentum? Is it being a bit more flexible on marketing, or like where do you see that changing? What could they do?
I think if it's people that are young enough and hungry enough and agile enough on a brand base, on a national brand base, I think they could compete beautifully. But because they're not agile, it's really, really hard. And, you know, I look at restaurants like food businesses. There's some incredible food businesses that have been franchising out, like Guzman Gomez, that are taking on the international powerhouse brands and giving them a really solid run for their money. They're having fun. They're authentic. They're listening to their consumers. So, you know, I think there's still good legs in potentially going for franchise business. I think consumers have to remember that they're paying 10 to 20% more in their fees. You know, so I think consumers have to remember that it's going to cost you more to use a franchise. And are you going to get more? Well, probably. I think that's what we're sort of having a little debate about this morning. I personally don't think so.
Yeah, and I find it ironic as well when you get those people who move away from the franchise, start up their own, but then they franchise theirs and make multiples. And then they sort of fall into the trap of what they moved away from, when you're creating
Well,
multiple
that's right.
offices as well.
They lose the agility and they lose the authenticity that they had. I think Stone was a brand like that,
Yeah.
you know, within our area. So they were doing a wonderful job in Manly, and then they went out to start franchising. So it's pretty interesting to watch. It's a really interesting landscape. It's really funny that it's not a landscape that many people openly discuss. People don't really want to use names. People don't really want to talk about brands. People are shy or embarrassed or intimidated. I don't know. But I'm happy to talk about it this morning. And I think it's on a lot of people's minds, because you're seeing these boards going up and down all around you and these businesses changing.
Yeah, and I think it's no one's really talking about it, but I think we're definitely seeing something there. So I think the brands are going to the franchises will have to do something to rock the boat, change it up, because you're right, a lot of people are coming away from it. Interesting. I'm just trying to think, what else? I don't think we were on Facey, so how do we save this, Mark? We screen record it, do we?
Yeah, I think so. But I think the message from today is power to the locals. You know, we are a family business. The Novak brand has been in the industry for over 50 years in the northern beaches. You know, we're fiercely local, fiercely proud of it. We now get asked to speak nationally regularly about how we do and what we do about it. I would probably get 2 to 3 calls a week about people asking about taking their franchise brand to be an independent. I get asked so regularly. And that was hence of doing this today a little bit as well, to talk about the pros and cons.
Yeah.
And you know, and also I think that software's had a lot to play with as well, Michael, where you used to turn to a person. You know, used to turn to a person in a national franchise and say, "Hey, boss, I've got this problem." You've got a lot of online structure and presence and value that you can draw from these days.
Well, that's a big thing as well, actually. The cost, the technology to actually run a real estate office from the sales side and property management has really shifted, and it's probably a bit more user-friendly now and cost-affordable to do it yourself, and to run it yourself, rather than leveraging off a franchise who had their own system and you had to be a part of them to use it, and there wasn't anything else you could use. I think that software was a really, really big thing that people were a bit scared of, going, how do I do this? Where do I start? I'll go under the comfort of a franchise. And now with technology, there's so many platforms for managing the properties, to portals to put them online, that it's probably a little bit easier to do it yourself and have that confidence.
Well, yeah, you had to choose. You had to sort of take everything from that franchise hook, line, and sinker. Whereas I think often as a business owner, you liked what that brand did with buyer management. You liked what that brand did with landlord management, and you actually had to holistically choose one brand that sort of did everything. But you couldn't. You didn't want to. You wanted to take a little bit from everyone. Now with software, you can take that little bit from everyone, so you can snap on different parts to your business. You can have a website different to anyone else, because you can choose a website. You can have a rental software to help out landlords and tenants different and better than anyone else. So you can actually start piecing together your own agency with software now.
But do you think there's a danger where, not a danger, but I think, like, I'm sure you've seen there's independents, they go from a franchise to an independent, but they're a real estate agent and they just miss the bar when it comes to everything, to do it themselves, i.e. branding, marketing. Like, do you think it can go that you can sort of, do you reckon anything as independent is better than being with a franchise, or there's a balance where you just should have stayed with the franchise? Like, how do you know? Like, you obviously can engage companies to market yourself. What's tips out there for people to know not to sort of, can you go wrong?
Don't try independent. Yeah. I think, you know, if you are happy to run systems and work head down, bum up, franchise is not bad for you as a real estate agent, and as a real estate agent as a principal of an agency. But I think if you are pushing yourself, your business all the time, and leading in your in what you do. I think that the franchise, you'll find you're constantly being dragged down from a franchise. But I certainly wouldn't underestimate it. I had a discussion I think it was last night with a friend of mine, and you know, he's got problems he's got issues in his business he's trying to deal with. Plus, he's talking about getting rid of the franchise. And I said, mate, leave the franchise alone. That's just going to keep churning. Work on your business first and get those things in your business right before you address your franchise. So I think, to answer your question in short, you've got to be you really got to be absolutely smashing it in your agency in order to drop the franchise, to find that they're dragging you behind, because you certainly don't want to take on, for the cost of saving 10% and doing it purely to save the cost, you could screw yourself. Yeah,
so you got to really be honest where you are and not think you're better than you are, which most agents do. So that's hard. That's a big thing as well.
And we've got local competitors that are independents that just copy absolutely everything that we do, and it's like, well, what do you?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like far out. All innovation that we actually churn out in our business just gets replicated. I guess that's the biggest compliment ever. But I think it's a bit of a worry if you've chosen to be independent and you're choosing just to mirror what one particular agency is doing all the time. You got to be a real leader in your category to run an independent agency.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Like, there's a lot of benefits and support you get with the franchise. Let's take away the money and bring in clients just to run your business. Software, accounting, the procedures. It's basically, you've got the recipe. And if you're happy with just ticking along, I don't think it's being complacent. I think it's just knowing your strengths. And if your strength isn't innovating and doing procedures, then they offer a great platform.
It's pretty good. But you will pay more as a real estate agent.
100%,
and a business owner, you will pay more. If, as a consumer using those services, you are paying more. You're paying up to 10% more to 15% more for that privilege.
Yes. But if you do have that flair and that innovation, then there's a great opportunity with that independent. But yeah, you're right. To go independent just to sort of do the same thing and save your 10%, I think it's probably a bit of a, I don't think it's a good attitude when your business, your attitude is doing it to save 10%. It should always be reinvesting in yourself. We're doing this shift to grow, to do this, not save. I think when you start thinking like that, it's probably death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing. It's like, oh, and then you do something else. Like for the concept of not doing brochures to save the money, not because like that, you know, I mean, like, even though you may not to do it to go digital and you've introduced another thing to replace it, but there's just two different attitudes in the mind, like doing it to save and doing it to be different sort of thing. And I think you got to be mindful of why you're doing it. And then make sure it's
you've always got to be offering value, Michael. You've always got to be, you know, you cannot be destroying value and putting it in your pocket. People cotton onto it. You've always got to be adding value. So for us, you know, I think with ourselves, we still spend that franchise fee, but we spend it on value adds that our clients can benefit and add value from. Do you know what I mean? I think that's clearly what people like in the marketplace, that we haven't pocketed the money, we've reinvested it back in so that the landlords can benefit, the tenants can benefit, the people that use our services definitely benefit. Definitely.
Yep. Alrighty. Anything else you want to add on this, Mark?
Have a great day.
Have a great day, and thank you everyone for watching. Sorry about who was tuning into Facebook, even though you won't get the apology because you're not on it. So anyway, we'll make it work. We'll be back tomorrow.
All right. See you, bud.